No, 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 no.
I do not condone that parenting approach, but I thought it reminded me of the way the market kind of trains traders when they're beginning to get on the journey of financial investment. They see this smackdown come in out of nowhere, and it causes them to be afraid. It paralyzes them, and in some cases, it causes them to make decisions that are not in their best interest. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened with the Fed today, and I'm going to take you into the Bitcoin chart to give you some important perspective on where we might be at, what might be coming around the corner. I'm going to lay out two scenarios for your consideration, and these are the exact views that are shaping my investment strategy right now. I'm going to share them with you. This is the Stocks with Josh show today. Hopefully that kid is getting more affection and love from his mom and dad than he is getting these crazy parenting tactics. So right now, the Fed has given the market a wild ride today because he did the unexpected. The market did. I did not expect him personally to come out as dovish as he has. The fact is that inflation has ceased going down at the rate that it previously had. We've begun to flatten out and even come up a little bit. And so you might expect a more hawkish Fed who's warning of the possibility of even a rate hike this year. But instead, we've got a more dovish Fed that affirmed a clear path to 3 rate cuts in 2024. The market was putting pressure on the Fed to say that he could possibly need to do 4, but he came out and he had been saying that it looked like the most that would be on the table would be 2. And so this was a massive concession move by the part of the Fed, a very dovish Fed today, saying that there was easing coming. And at the same time, the analysis of everybody in the market is that the market is strong. Inflation is still sticky. These are the terms that are being used. The Fed has not hit his goal. This gave the markets a wild ride. We saw some extreme volatility. Right after the Fed began to release information, we saw the market spike, and then we saw it respond with some fear and a sell-off, which is typical, but we ultimately pushed higher as the Fed affirmed the position that we were getting, that there is a dovish Fed in town. And this kind of reminds me of what I've been saying, that I'm expecting an environment from the Fed as well as the government. It's a low regulation, supportive environment for the markets because we're in an election year. And so I think that things are going to largely remain status quo, and they're going to give the market what the market wants. And I think that that is pointing to a market that can climb higher. Now, does this mean that the fear of selling or profit taking is over and that we're just going to climb? No. I gave a prediction for the S&P 500 the other day that because of where we're at and how much we have come up and the nature of the move that is extending away from moving averages, that I'm expecting a correction imminently of around 5 to 6%. But that is not a big deal when you look at the momentum that we've enjoyed for all of 2024 so far this year. But after we get that minor correction, I'm expecting a continued push up, and I see the S&P 500 hitting 5,500 in the days ahead. And when we get to that point, we'll have to assess it. We'll have to assess the environment. There's a lot of bullishness left in 2024. And the fact is that AI is still an extremely important part of that story. And we're seeing that the AI stocks continue to do heavy lifting. But this video, I wanted to take a minute and get into crypto because crypto has not been doing great so far. We went up. I mean, that's not really true. Crypto's done incredible. It's done way better than anybody's expected. And similarly, it got overheated when it came up to 70K, 72K, 73K. And at that point, we needed to consolidate and digest and pause for a minute so that we could then continue to climb higher. But I want to go back into the timeline of previous crypto cycles so that you guys can understand what is unusual about what's happening right now. Because I think it tells an interesting story, because we got to decide where are we at and what can we expect in the next 4 to 5 months out of cryptocurrency. Because if you are cutting your bags right now, you might be cutting them at the worst potential moment. Now, we're just going to look at the charts together. Let's dive in and do that. See that crypto is having a beautiful green day. Bitcoin, along with the rest of the market, is climbing higher. And let's kind of examine where we're at in this moment. All right, we've got the Bitcoin chart pulled up, and let me just explain some of my drawings on here. This, of course, is the 2017 all-time high, the previous cycle top for Bitcoin. And of course, we then entered into a long decline in winter phase. This is the bottom. And then we came out of the winter phase with the phase 1 of the Bitcoin bull cycle of the previous cycle, which brought us up out of the winter. And then there was this long period of time where it came down, and this yellow dot right here represents the halving event in May of 2020. And what normally happens is after this initial pulling out of the winter push, we get a large pullback that about 3 months prior to the halving begins to rebuild positive momentum. When we get to the halving, there's a little bit of back and forth fluctuation, but after the halving, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months after the halving that brought us back to the all-time high level right here and right here. Okay. And so if we now go into the future and kind of look at, okay, well, what's been happening recently? Well, we have bypassed, or some things have changed. So the halving event is ahead of us still. But we made back to all-time highs. So we didn't get really any of this drawdown period, didn't exist. It's as if we went from this dot right here directly with no pullback to this dot right here. And so here's what I want you guys to examine. That's the way this current environment is. We've had no pull down whatsoever from coming out of the lows of the winter. This was the lows of the winter, and pretty much we've come all the way back up to all-time highs, and we've done it before the halving event has even occurred. Well, normally when we get to this all-time high level, which we have come up to and are currently, we're still, even though Bitcoin is pulled back, we are still on the monthly calendar above all the previous closes on the month in the previous top bull cycle. Now, normally when we get to this spot, there is not a pullback. So you see that right here, there's no pullback. After the halving and after we get to the all-time high, typically it's followed by the 4 or 5 strongest months pushing all the way to a new top. And so the question that we're having to process is, normally at this moment in time, not the halving moment, but the time in which we get back to the previous all-time high, normally there is 4 to 5 months before a great big parabolic move. And so things are really out of order here. And one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, will we get any of this drawdown? Right? You know, we're not even talking about the drawdown after the coming out of the winter. We're talking about any of this sideways movement that occurs after the halving, because normally we will get 4 or 5 months. If we get that, then we'd be looking for that big 4 to 5 pump period. We'd be looking for that at the end of this year. But if we don't get that, then technically this candle should close above these previous tops, and we should build and have a higher month candle for the month of April, right? And we should not be coming back and closing beneath 61,000 on the monthly candle. And so here's the main point in going through all of that. The fact is that when we get to all-time highs, we should immediately go into a 4 to 5 month upswing and get to the brand new all-time high for Bitcoin. But there's a lot of months of a sideways or downward movement that the market has not counted in, which means that we are way ahead of schedule. At bare minimum, we're 5 to 6 months ahead of schedule right now. And so here's what I think. I want to paint the scenario of, okay, what happens? Best case scenario, we will know by the end of March and for sure by the end of April whether or not Bitcoin's going to go straight up from here. We should not have a red candle month. We should only have green candles on the monthly time frame from this point forward. If we produce a single red candle at this point, then we have to assume that we're not in the final stage of the Bitcoin, that it has been postponed. And if you had to guess as to how far out it would be pushed, well, we look at some of the time frame that normally would get calculated in, and it would be between 3 to 5 months. Now, the big question that a lot of people would ask is, should we assume that we're going to have a pretty big drawdown at this point? And I'm going to say, no, I don't think that we would have a pretty strong drawdown, but I think we might have some form of a drawdown. And what would be the impact on alts? Well, I think the alts would run. I think if we had a substantial drawdown on Bitcoin and a cooling off phase that lasted longer than a month, and if you are understanding what I'm laying down on this page, I've only predicted under 30 days of consolidation and a continued move higher because of where we're at on the fib and where we're at in the overall pump cycles of Bitcoin. That's what the charts are telling me, that we should go directly into a 4 to 5 month period where we hit a brand new all-time high, and we will have had absolutely no consolidation that we normally would have seen. It should have already happened. So if we continue that way, the March candle should not go red, the April candle should not go red, and they should each be climbing. That would confirm it's absolute go time, and that this is ultimately going to have a harder crash later. But it would be kind of healthy if we did begin to go on a longer consolidation period that lasted 3 to 5 months. I'm not predicting that, but here's the good part of that. If that happened, I think that eventually Bitcoin would go sideways and it would fall into a place where the altcoins could rally. And that, I think, is what people should be paying attention to. But I just wanted to come out and make this video. One, we've got a dovish Fed, and a dovish Fed is good for crypto. We're at a place in time, a very strategic trigger point where we're at the all-time level for Bitcoin. And normally when we get to this spot, it's not even concern yourself with the halving. When we get to this spot in the chart, it's normally followed up by the 4 strongest months for Bitcoin that happen in the course of the bull cycle. So we are either way ahead of schedule and we're going to continue to stay ahead of schedule, or the market's going to reveal a new plan or a new charting pattern that we have not seen before, with some form of a longer drawdown on Bitcoin and end of the year pump. But in all of these scenarios, the fact is, if you are looking for a top in 2025, that's not what the market is pointing to right now. If we do cool off, then I think that we're going to have a real alt rally potentially materialize. And I wanted to get those thoughts out to you guys as quickly as I could. Tonight, I'm going to be going live on Stock Up with Larry Jones's page, the 4 of us, the Stock Squad. If you don't know what that is, that's the Patreon. It's the Discord that the 4 of us host. We're going to have a live tonight on Stock Up with Larry Jones's page over in the Discord. Stock Mo and I had a live over there midday today, and Mo outlined a straddle on the Fed talking, and exactly as he outlined it, it would have been another winner. He's providing great technicals and great trading opportunities over there. Myself, Stock Up with Larry Jones and Keenan Grace, giving trade alerts, technicals, and answering questions. Check it out. I'll leave a link in the top pinned comment. I hope this was helpful to you guys today. Peace and blessings. We'll see you this evening. Take care.